I'm just really excited to see how architects can continue to influence other fields. I think it's such a valuable core that so many different fields could benefit from. I think this next generation is going to even do more to push the envelope in terms of what's possible in applying that skill set. I'm Natasha Case. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Coolhaus Ice Cream. My first real architecture job after grad school was Disney Imagineering, thinking about telling stories with design. You really see how brand and architecture can come together. With Coolhaus, something within 24 hours can go from idea to putting it out there into the world. I definitely think of Disney as a great way, as a great build into that. Freya and I started Coolhaus because I had been playing around with this idea of food meets architecture all through undergrad and grad school. And I kind of had a silly name for it, Farchitecture. And it was really a passionate hobby. I didn't think of it as a business per se. And then when I was at Disney, I wasn't there long before the recession hit. To kind of lighten the mood at the office, started making these ice cream and cookies from scratch into ice cream sandwiches in really unique flavors, naming the combinations after architects. I would just give them out to people who had heard some of this bad news. I met Freya, I had been doing this a week or two. And she, I think, really saw the business potential. And I think she really challenged me to think about the numbers behind it. We saw in the ice cream freezer aisle that there was really no innovation. There was nothing unique happening with the products there. And most importantly, I don't think the brands really spoke to us as millennials and definitely not as women. Why shouldn't we create the brand that we want? The only thing we could really afford to do was to start with an ice cream truck. And we ended up bringing that to Coachella, which is where we launched. The architecture background had a huge influence on what I'm doing today. The way I think of it most broadly is, what does it look like if you kind of take architecture skills to create a brand? With a brand, you're really creating a visual language for telling stories and expressing values. I think there are a lot of pieces of architecture as well that apply to entrepreneurship. I think of it as a kind of a balance of right and left brain. There's tons of dealing with those logistics and bringing a really outside-the-box idea into something that's really viable for a consumer. In architecture, you touch so many aspects of what it takes to create a space or a building. And similarly with how I feel about entrepreneurship, you have to know kind of a little bit about everything, and then you end up partnering with specialists to execute the idea. So I don't know, I think it's still a huge part of what I do, and I'm really glad that I have that background because I think it helped me position things a bit differently. Social media was really at its inception when we started in 2009. We kind of embraced that really early on, and I think we pride ourselves in always being pioneering and being open to whatever new capabilities are on social. The way we use social as an instrument the most right now is just that deep listening. It's a way that we can really hear what the consumer is saying and really dial into it in a way that I don't think brands could do, the decade before that. We really look at data a lot, and we have the luxury now that we're the size we are to buy data from grocery stores. You can see everything going through the register, your competitors. You can understand what your consumers' needs are better and really create products that are for them, in innovation. As the brand, I think there's a huge benefit because people are so dialed into the stories behind the brands they buy now. So the more you can get that out there, the more I think people have a personal connection with what you're creating and what they're buying. Probably our biggest game-changing moment was when we did the test at Whole Foods. We just launched in 3 stores with 5 ice cream sandwiches, or 5 top flavors. That really unlocked the potential for scale for the brand. That's about 95% of our revenues come from the grocery world. And we're in about 7,000 stores and continuing to grow, innovating new products. I think that's when we really started to think of Coolhaus as having that potential to be a household brand and really be something here to stay. We created a podcast with Eater. For Eater, they were really looking for kind of more of the entrepreneurial stories, more people kind of building businesses and not exclusively in food. Coming from the food space, we have kind of our own perspective, but to bring the audience of Eater, which is mainly people interested in reading about food in restaurants, some other perspectives of spaces and how those brands are grown. And hopefully that can help inspire thinking of things differently. We had phenomenal guests. We had Pira Gilardi from Refinery 29, Jane Werwan from Dermalogica, who's gone all the way to Exit, Jen Rubio, who does Away.com, which has since become, I think, like billion-dollar valuation. We're gonna go in, I think, two directions with as far as product and innovation. One is we're really looking to own the novelty space. So we see that a lot of our competition are really only playing in the pint space. At the end of the day, it's more about like a unique flavor and you're doing it in the same format. For us, really owning novelty makes us hugely differentiated from a lot of what they're doing. We're introducing a multi-pack, a smaller size that we really identified the consumer is, lusting for. We're working on reinventing the Choco Taco as a taquito, something more bite-sized like a bonbon. The other side of the coin is we've really found plant-based to be actually a huge potential. We launched this year in all Whole Foods with 5 plant-based ice cream sandwiches, and they're selling as well as our dairy sandwiches there. It's still indulgent and it's still decadent, but having this alternative to dairy. So we plan on everything that we develop in the future, we're always going to create a dairy-free version of that. From a work culture perspective, a lot has changed with what the expectation is for what your job means, how big a part that is of your lifestyle, what you expect your company to do for you, how fun it can be to go to work. I would say that's one of the most important things for us, actually, to keep really kind of close to the vest. I think sometimes as women we forget to factor in what about specifically for us? Let's be selfish and make sure that that aligns with the company vision. I'm just so excited for the next generation of women as they're kind of coming up and choosing their career path. There's just much more of a perception and a truth around women, supporting each other and all coming up together. I think it's an investment for that next generation to just lead by example. It's hard to be what you can't see sometimes. Walking yourself through what's really possible in the biggest sense is so important. And I think it really helps you unlock what's powerful behind your idea. You walk through a wall when you don't know it's there. Sometimes your biggest weapon is just not realizing what a big risk you're taking. So it's okay to just go for things without totally knowing every single thing about the universe you're entering, because if you did, sometimes that would stop you from doing it. I'm glad that I just kind of went for it. And I think ultimately that became a superpower to be able to just break that down and now look back and think, oh, I'm glad I really took that risk because it pays off in a really unique way. Keep innovating, keep thinking outside the box.